Hi, welcome to That Reminds Me Of, a podcast about film and the films that remind us of that film. You're here with Baron and the Doc.
And the Maestro.
Do we need another drink? Yes, we do. Yeah.
Baron, my friend.
Doc, how are you?
I'm very well, and I'm extremely happy to be at the Capitol again, but in a different location this time. Where are we?
We're upstairs. This is the level 3 foyer or something. We're between the lift and the men's toilets at the moment. It's prime location.
Yeah, exactly where we belong.
Yes, and the good folks at RMIT have allowed us to film here, so we're very grateful for that. We actually chose this spot because it's a little quiet, it's a little out of the way, although we will probably get interrupted a number of times while up here with people going to the toilets. Just gonna have to live with that.
I can't wait to be interrupted. It's a mystery box. Like, who are we going to get through those doors?
Who will, when the elevator dings, who will it be?
Do you know who it could be?
Tell me.
It could be Mark Leonard Winter.
Mark Leonard Winter?
Yes.
Who's that?
He happens to be, well, he's an actor come director who has directed his first feature film, and it is called The Rooster.
The Rooster.
Yes.
Great new Aussie film. I would say maybe in the style of Blue Tongue films, perhaps, you might say. But it's not. It's its own thing. I think he produced it with his wife and some others.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we saw it last night here at MIFF, and it was another packed audience. I think that's just probably something we don't have to say anymore, right? Like, every screening is a packed audience.
Well, the good ones are, and we've chosen the good ones.
Maybe that's what it is. Yes. Yeah. I love it, man. When you go to a screening at a festival and it's brimming with people, the energy that you get from that is next level. It's something you don't get anywhere else. You don't get it in a megaplex. It's a festival thing.
I have a brief moment where I don't want to sit so close to people.
Yes.
And usually during MIFF it's really cold. Everyone's coughing.
Oh.
Not so this time. We've had really good weather so far.
Yes.
Touch wood. And I've just enjoyed. I think I'm over, the COVID isolation and really enjoying just rubbing shoulders with everybody in my seats.
Oh, in this festival, it's like COVID never happened.
I know.
People are not concerned at all. I will say that the variety of cinemas or theatres that we have, converted theatres, that's the festival way, provides you with a variety of comfort levels of seating.
It does.
So you're either right next to each other, or you have a little bit more space. Or you've got a chair that folds up and down with zero padding, or very minimal leg room so that you've got your knees up around your ears. It's all part of the experience.
I think there's a comfort axis and an atmosphere axis.
Yes.
And there's a sweet spot somewhere on there. And the Capitol is pretty good at getting that sweet spot.
Yeah, the Capitol's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm stoked that we got to film here.
Yeah.
This is great. And this is only one of a whole bunch of episodes we're going to do here at the Capitol. You can't see it. Maybe you can see it in the wide shot. There's incredible carpet, very Shining-esque. It's got this whole retro decor that I'm digging. Amazing lighting. What's with this? I don't even know, but that's just a thing that you do at a place like this.
That reminds me of, is it a Vincent Price film? House of Horrors or something?
The Haunting of Hill House? No.
The Haunting of something, yeah.
Something about a hill and a house and hauntings.
Yeah, where they filmed it. It was a real house. Maybe it was deco or something. I'm not very good at my periods, but it was quite a thing, the house they filmed in.
The House on Haunted Hill.
That's it.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Took a moment. We got there.
Anyway, so we're here today to talk about The Rooster.
Yep.
And I'm very keen to hear what you thought about it. Should we start with synopsis?
Yes, please. And I think we're not doing turns, but can you do it? Can you do it this time?
You're going to make me do it?
Yes, please.
Well, it's just reading it out, and it's easy. So, The Rooster. Hugo Weaving and Pheonix Raie play a hermit and a cop who form an unlikely connection amid crisis in this wonderfully weird sucker punch of tenderness.
Oh, I don't like it when a synopsis tells you what to think about the film. Like this wonderfully weird. No, just tell us what it's about. We'll decide if it's wonderfully weird or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that just me?
Yeah, I think it's not just you. I'm sure some people would agree.
Actually, is that the MIFF synopsis or is that an IMDb?
It's the MIFF.
Okay, that's a different category then. That's fine.
Yeah, because the MIFF synopsis, and I think they do a great job with the synopses on MIFF.
Yeah.
It really tries to pick the words that are going to get the right audience in.
They're selling tickets as
They're
well.
selling tickets.
Ha.
I think that's a good one. A wonderfully weird sucker punch of tenderness. I reckon that gets straight. That's a sucker punch to the heart of the film.
Sucker, yeah, that's great. Yeah, agree. That synopsis with the sucker punch makes me think of Punch Drunk Love, which actually, not bad, as a potential reminds me of. Not where we were going, but anyway. That aside, let's talk about the film first. What were your thoughts, broadly?
Well, it took me a while. Like, it's a slow burn of a film, and for, I don't know how long, 15 or 20 minutes,
Yep.
I was enjoying it, but I was sort of saying, well, to myself, okay, well, what do you got? Where are you going? So I was just on the fence.
Yep.
And then Hugo Weaving arrived.
I was going to say 15 or 20 minutes is how long it takes for Hugo Weaving to arrive.
And it was great before that.
Yeah.
But I just hadn't worked it out.
Yeah.
Hugo Weaving arrived, and his performance blew my mind.
I would say that up until the point that Hugo Weaving arrives, it's a little bit of I don't know what this film is. Is this going to be very depressing? Is it going to be one of those films that is a bit artsy and, maybe doesn't get to the point? Once Hugo Weaving arrives, I think you start to feel like, okay, this is going to resolve into something pretty interesting.
Well, let's talk about, we'll get to Pheonix Raie as well in a sec, because he was equally good in a different way, I would argue. But Hugo, I've always loved him. I think any Aussie loves Hugo Weaving, but I've never really seen such a amazing display of actorly delights as this performance. Like, he puts every aspect of his body into the performance. When there's close-ups of his faces, his eyes, his lips, his sounds, everything are working like an orchestra to bring us something amazing.
I think part of the reason why this performance is so great is that he's been given a great role as well. And it has allowed him, like you say, to explore a lot of emotions and a lot of nuance in emotions, because his character's a little bit cracked. He's playing a guy who at any moment could just go left or right, veer off in a random tangent, and there's a lot of, built into the character, there's a lot of like hidden emotional things for him to mine, lots of trauma from the past. So
doesn't that uncertainty, not knowing which way he's going to go, just you feed off that as the audience? And even though it's a slow burn of a thing, anything could happen at any stage. So it's kind of exciting as well.
Controversial, but is it a thing for Australian actors at some point when they get to 60-something to grow a beard, wear a singlet, and just sort of let it all loose?
Are you referring to me?
To you, yes.
Given my debut performance in Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was thinking that we've seen a number of Australian actors go that route recently. Pretty much all of the greats, sort of at a certain point, that's what happens.
Well, I think actors are never shy, for starters, but as they get older, the Hugo Weavings of the world seem to care less and less about vanity.
Maybe the reason that's in my mind to a large degree is that movie Rams. Did you see that?
Rams.
Actually, good.
No.
A friend of mine wrote it, and it did quite well. It was in cinemas, had a big release.
Yep.
And yes, it has Sam Neill in it doing a Hugo Weaving, or vice versa.
Aren't they both great?
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, Pheonix Raie, what did you think of him?
Well, he was great, but he was more subdued and hard to latch onto in the first instance. But so when we saw it, we saw at the benefit of getting the interviews at the end. So Mark Leonard Winter and a lot of the main cast, including Hugo and Pheonix, were up there. And Pheonix talked about how he'd been, forgotten if it was how he'd been asked to play the role or just how he played it. And it was kind of not to bring anything to it, just to be that sounds like it's, not great, but it really was great. He's like the proxy for us as an audience, I thought, so we can just experience the movie through him, and he was just wonderful in it, but gave us some space to kind of live it as well.
It sounded to me like, because he came right off the back of a TV show in the US, it sounded to me like he didn't actually have a lot of time to prep for it, wasn't given any rehearsal time. I think he met Hugo Weaving the day of filming or the day before or something like that. So he was probably forced into this a little bit, but I think he was emotionally intelligent enough to go, actually, I don't really have that choice, so I'm going to come at it as like an open vessel and sort of take in what's happening, which is, for this role, kind of a perfect choice because, like you say, the audience experiences the whole film through his eyes and we're all there going, what is happening? And that's what he's doing at the same time. And it kind of works on that level. Yeah,
well, you say what is happening, it's things are happening to him.
Right, yes.
So from the very outset, without giving things away, things are happening to him and he's just having to absorb that, and you can feel them being absorbed into him. And perhaps by him not giving away too much, you feel that tension. And then there's a few points where he does explode into, emotion, usually with Hugo Weaving, and because of Hugo Weaving's character.
I agree, yeah. I think, he's not a very, now that you put it that way, he's not a very active character, which, is probably part of the reason why he has less, I feel like, as a performance, he has less to work with. It's not just the fact that he's taking the audience on the journey, but he is just, things are just happening to him. He's not really making a lot of strong choices throughout most of the film. And normally I would say that's a bit of a negative. And maybe that's one of the weaker points of the film. But I think for what this film is, and the fact that you're spending so much time just in awe of what Hugo Weaving's doing, it's okay that he has a less active role.
But also there are points that he does get exuberant, and that's all the more exciting because we're not used to it with his character. So I think that the dynamics of how he changes at moments, makes for a good character arc.
We've raved about the actors a little bit. I think this is a very solidly directed film as well.
The direction from Mark Leonard Winter was just superb.
Yeah.
You could just tell it was a very singular vision that he had and was allowed to explore it. So that's probably the unusual thing.
Yeah.
That someone, or maybe people did come in over the top on certain decisions, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like this was the film that he wanted to make, and he got to make it, and he got to have Hugo Weaving in it, and he got this amazing location, which I think is his neighbourhood where he lives. So really credit to him. I hope we can have him on the podcast one day.
Totally credit to him. To pull this up, you can tell it's a very personal story, and in the Q&A afterwards, he talks about that. Like, this is something very close to him. It's based off of his own experiences to a degree.
Yeah.
And so, to be able to make that film that you want to make without people talking you out of it is huge. I think that's huge. And he's done it, and he's done a great job of it.
Okay, well this show isn't called Talk About Random Things About a Film. It's called That Reminds Me Of.
Yep.
So why don't we start talking about the other artworks that it reminded us of?
Yes, indeed. Let's, while I get my very slow reacting iPad to... Yep, there we go, got it. So do you want to go first or shall I?
I want you to go first.
Okay, so I was reminded of a film called The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Which I've heard of, but I've not seen, so please explain.
Sure. Starring Shia LaBeouf and Zach Gottsagen, who is a delightful fellow with Down syndrome. It's a story set in the South in the US. Absolutely beautiful, and it follows the journey of Shia LaBeouf's character, who's a bit of a down and out vagrant, on his way from one place to another, who comes across this other fellow who has Down syndrome and has run away from home and is obsessed with wrestling. And the two of them just bond and become best mates, and it becomes Shia LaBeouf's character's mission in life to get this fella to a wrestling camp of sorts, like to learn from the best. And so And it's almost kidnapping, basically, what he's doing. But the two of them have this great interplay, and it's all about maleness in a world that's very complicated, and their love of each other is very uncomplicated. They're just best mates.
So it's another buddy film.
Yeah.
If we trace the history of our podcast,
Yeah.
I think we'd find quite a few buddy films.
Absolutely.
Maybe this is a buddy podcast.
Right. It is a buddy podcast.
It is a buddy podcast.
We are buddies, and our affection is carrying this podcast.
That one makes me think of Rain Man as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Two blokes, one with a disability, but both bringing them different things to the relationship.
Yep, 100%.
That was just a bonus. That's not my first one.
Great.
Should I go?
Yes, please.
Well, my first one is another film that we've both seen and reviewed, and it's The Stranger. Remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
So first of all, that's written and at least directed, I think it's written too, by Thomas Michael Wright, who is another actor with a triple barrel name.
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's the first thing that's similar.
And actually does direct with Blue Tongue, who I referenced earlier.
There you go. That's why this one feels like a Blue Tongue film.
Yep.
So The Stranger, again, two blokes. One's a cop, same as the Rooster, and the other is a criminal type with some personal issues. So without giving too much away, he's somewhat of a stand-in for Hugo Weaving, eccentric. You don't know what he's thinking. You don't know what he's guilty of.
Misunderstood.
And you're forced through that relationship to have some tenderness for both characters, and to really kind of see the relationship from both of their points of view. And I think it's more complicated than maybe some random buddy cop movie.
Yeah, that's what this film is as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing more of that, aren't we? More complicated buddy movies.
Yes, particularly around male connection or friendship. Like for too many years we've had like that trope of like what a buddy cop or buddy film is, like two very masculine men and their relationship is that, So now there's just more and more of these films coming out where it just reflects the fact that the relationship between men is often more complicated than that.
I wonder if it's life influencing art or art trying to influence life. Like, have men come as far? So these are rugged men. These are Aussie men.
Yeah, that's right.
Have Aussie men come as far as this film suggests, or is it the more sensitive filmmakers who are portraying what they would like the rest of us to aspire to?
Yeah. No, I would say it's maybe that, but I would say it's, in my opinion, more likely the more sensitive filmmakers saying, no, guys, they're actually, there's depth there that you're not seeing. Like, these rugged Aussie men actually are pretty sensitive underneath all of that, like, check it out, look at these guys. I think it's a little bit of that, and it's in response to all of the sort of wokeness that's going on, all of the toxic masculinity films that are happening, which have their place, but I feel like this, there's a bit of pushback coming as well. Like, not all blokey blokes are actually that bad, maybe.
Well, and the good thing about The Rooster and The Stranger, but in particular The Rooster, is you see that transformation, don't you? Like, you're not presented with two sensitive guys.
Yeah.
You're presented with one who's kind of in himself, the cop, and repressed and struggling and can't express himself and lonely, and there's some growth there. Yeah. And Hugo Weaving likewise is a basket case. And well, let's not get into how he grows. We'll give away too much.
All right, second one for me.
Second one for you.
So I'm going to talk about a film that we've seen here at this festival, Biosphere by Mel Eslin. So we haven't got the episode out yet. It will be coming, but Biosphere stars Mark Duplass and Sterling K. Brown. It's set in a sort of post-apocalyptic setting where the two men who created the end of the earth situation, wiped out all of civilization, are now stuck in a biosphere together, which they built. One of them's the president, Mark Duplass. The other one's his advisor and the smart one of the two, basically. And it just sort of just shows what happens to them and their relationship when their food source runs out, and they realize they're sort of faced with the fact that they might not be able to survive indefinitely in this place. And other weird, crazy stuff happens in this film, which we're not going to get into. That one is very much a film about toxic masculinity, but exploring it like this film with a bit more of a subtle eye. It's like, well, what actually is going on behind those relationships, and what happens to men when they're, over time, when their relationship starts to change and become a bit more intimate, and you know, it's not just about masculine stuff. So within this festival, we have a great companion set of the Rooster and Biosphere. Like, if you watch those back to back, you would get a really interesting two takes on that, like, masculine relationships.
It's incredible when you watch things in close proximity, you inevitably start to make connections, don't you?
True.
That's why so often we'll mention films that we've reviewed or, you know, watched recently, because you can find overlaps in almost everything. I think this one, Biosphere and Rooster, have obvious overlaps. But even in weird stuff, I can think of other films that we'll probably cover in future episodes.
Second one for you, Doc.
Second and final one for me is The Fisher King by Terry Gilliam.
Wow.
I haven't seen it for many, many years, but I remember the crux of it. And it's Jeff Bridges is this guy who's super confident, and he's a DJ, and he causes some deaths. So he's got this thing on his conscience. And then he meets this. We can give spoilers of our references, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're only not giving spoilers about the festival films because they're so fresh, and they're not even in cinemas yet around the world. Yeah.
So he meets the Fisher King, who is Robin Williams, and Robin Williams was previously a professor or something like that, but had a tragedy occur in his life. It happens that Jeff Bridges was inadvertently responsible for it, just as a side thing. And he's just gone into sort of his own little world of mania. He's kind of like he's a Don Quixote character, and the film really mirrors Don Quixote.
Yeah, cool.
So again, you've got the guy on his own journey, depressed, guilty, meeting this eccentric character, and between the two of them, they kind of work off each other and help save their worlds.
Beautiful. It's been, I don't remember when I saw that film. Maybe I was like 10 years old or something. So I need to revisit it. Actually, what kills me, how many films there are that we saw years and years ago that you remember were great, but you just, like, how are you going to have the time to catch up on all those old great films, plus all of the new great films that are coming out? Anyway, that's on the list.
And my memory of it is probably faulty, so forgive me, viewers, if I've got that wrong. But
I think that every time I'm talking about an old film, I'm like, I'm giving this synopsis based off a probably very flawed memory.
30-year-old memory.
Yeah. But hey, we don't do research. What are you talking about?
There's one thing that I do remember from The Fisher King that is a bit similar, though, is maybe this is just Terry Gilliam rather than just that film, but the cinematography is quite unique, very, very chaotic. I think that is a Terry Gilliam thing, isn't it? So you've got different angles where you're always made to feel uneasy. Yeah. And that, for The Fisher King, is kind of representing the mindset, the state of mind of the characters.
Because they're kind of nut jobs, right? Or one of them is, right? The Fisher King is.
Well, one of them's a nut job, and the other is sort of in his own turmoil as well. So very similar to the Rooster, and likewise with the Rooster, some of the shots, like when I'm picturing the tops of the trees where you're looking up, and the trees are sort of swaying, and as an audience member, you are feeling uneasy, and you're feeling like you are in in the headspace of Pheonix Raie,
Yes.
who is, going through a difficult time.
He's basically unmoored completely.
Mm.
He's left his job. He's in the middle of the wilderness. He's shacked up with a homeless person or a hermit, essentially.
Yeah.
And they're just being crazy together in the wild.
Unmoored is just a perfect description. That's exactly how he feels. He's got nothing to hold on to.
And how weird is it when, and it's handled well in the film, when he puts his cop's uniform back on?
Yeah.
You get a real sense of you're no longer seeing the man as a free, unmoored, untethered kind of person. He's suddenly got this like heavy weight back on him.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I'm feeling the heavy weight of how many more episodes we're doing in MIFF, so I think we
Yes.
better close this one out.
Short and sharp,
Short and sharp, that's what we've tried to do.
which is probably not. What do we got? 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Minus a few with edits. We'll be all right.
Perfect. Now, I love this one. We need to get some hilarity in the episodes back.
Yeah.
So let's hopefully get some.
So far, the films have been relatively heavy, and I think we've got more of them to come. So I'm hoping there's some light comedy, even just some weird, quirky stuff, just to mix it up a bit.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, anyway, one last thing.
Yeah.
Mark Leonard Winter. I was just about to give him another, rap.
Yeah.
But in the screening, it was such a nice moment when I think we both went to the bathroom halfway through because we would have been both tanked as usual. And there he was. I think it was at least the Australian premiere, probably the world premiere. I think
it was the world premiere.
it was, and he was outside the door, basically in a praying position, looking through the window, and he was so. You could tell he was so enthusiastic and nervous about how it would be how it would be received, and I can say with some confidence that it was received
Beautifully.
as well as he could have hoped.
When they say that this is a filmmaker's baby, he really did remind me of like the expectant father just waiting outside the door and hoping this baby would be delivered and people would be happy with the result. It was beautiful.
Actually, when I went to come back in, he was there and said, "Stop, because he was watching a scene, and we then watched for just a couple of seconds the scene together. I think it was the nude scene.
And he didn't. Oh, that's great. And he didn't want you to create a distraction as you were walking in for the audience. Is that why? Was he saying just wait a second?
Oh, maybe that was it.
And then he was letting you know when it was safe to go in.
Maybe that was it. I was sort of half hoping that it was just so we could share that moment of watching it together.
Could have been it
behind the doors.
Beautiful. Well, that is another MIFF film that people need to go see. It's an Australian film. Support it. And should we wrap it up?
Wrapped up.
Wrapped up. All right. See you at the next one.